The whole world is turning on Kevin Hart, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm here for it, okay? I remember being a big fan of Kevin Hart when he first burst onto the scene with his comedy, his crazy, infectious personality. I was rocking with Kevin Hart back in the day, but I feel like the past few years, he has become so arrogant, so full of himself. He thinks he's the oracle of cringe comedy, and I just really don't think he quite on the level that he thinks he is, to be honest with you. And so I'm low-key happy to see him getting dragged a little bit. And in this video, I'm going to break down some of the kind of embarrassing scandals and, you know, just situations that got Kevin Hart out of his body at the moment, all right? He's not looking too good, and a big thing that went down that kind of had everybody pointing the finger at Kevin Hart went down during this big roast recently, okay? This was like a big roast, all right? You know, basically, you know, they do these roasts, you know, Kevin basically, it's his time. All right, it's his time to get cooked. They had all the big comedians there, Shane Gillis, Tony Hinchcliffe, all of these comedians that you know and love. And, you know, they were cooking Kevin. And there's been a lot of controversy about some of the jokes that were made in front of him and how he reacted to them. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what the jokes were going down at Kevin Hart's roasts. Let me know in the comments if you feel like they took it a little bit too far or if this is just harmless comedy. But let's not forget, all these comedians, they spent years talking about, oh, we're so hard done by. You can't talk about certain topics, the Me Too movement, trans rights, so many things you can't say. I feel like that's so in the past. It's like, bro, we done heard a million. Dave Chappelle got a whole trans bashing comedy special. Like, we heard it. It's not even funny. It's hacky, right? It's hacky to joke about these things. So I do think it's interesting, you know, seeing these comedians pop out and, you know, do their roast. But, you know, I feel like Kevin Hart is one of the biggest hacks out here right now. But some of these jokes, they might offend you. So I'm going to give you a fair warning. And, you know, if you're offended by some of these jokes, let me know if it took it too far or if everyone's just being too sensitive. You know, comedians are meant to be the thickest skinned, toughest people who can take anything and shoot jokes back. But anyway, let's see the jokes and then I'll dig you into the controversy.
Kevin has so few black friends that he started a vegan fast food chain and nobody stopped him. He's won 2 Grammys, at least that's what the scale says when he stands on it. It's true he lost his gig hosting the Academy Awards because of some homophobic tweets, but you'd be homophobic too if you were eye level with everyone's cock. He got into a fist fight on a private plane, proof that no matter how much money black people have, they're still just gonna act like ninjas. This fight. You've done good though, Kevin. The black community is so proud of you. Right now, George Floyd is looking up at us all laughing so hard that he can't breathe. Kevin has so...
Okay, that last one was a little bit spicy. Okay, so the Breakfast Club did an interview with George Floyd's brother, and, you know, a lot of people felt like that joke took things too far. It was offensive. Obviously, they're saying George Floyd looking up at us, so they're saying he's in hell. All right, and look, George Floyd, he didn't deserve what happened to him. Okay, some people point he had a criminal past. He might have been scamming. He might have been on some drugs, whatever. He didn't deserve what happened to him, okay? I wouldn't have said George Floyd would be in hell. Like, that is kind of crazy, but it's like, look, I'm not going to be offended and outraged by that. Like, it's just like, I just disagree. Like, I wouldn't make that joke. But anyway, the Breakfast Club had George Floyd's brother on, and, you know, a lot of people have been digesting this comedy and feeling a little bit outraged about it.
Yes, yeah. Yes, it is May 25th. Now, he also talked about a part of the joke where Tony Hinchcliffe says to Kevin Hart that George Floyd is looking up at him. Let's take a listen to Terrence Floyd on that.
It was a part in there where we always say, you know, my brother looking down on us because we talking positive. The fact that he said that he's looking up, we were stuck on that. When we heard it, he was like, he's looking up from where? Are you trying to say he's in hell? So this is not what comedy is supposed to do. It's not supposed to have us thinking about what you meant. Oh, we supposed to laugh to heal.
As I said yesterday, what's funny to you is a trigger to others, and that's why the roast should only be about people who are participating in the roast. If Kevin and Cheryl Underwood and Pete Davidson are fine with people making jokes on their deceased loved ones, that's on them. They're participating in the roast. But people who weren't there, who have nothing to do with the roast, they shouldn't even be mentioned. Mm-hmm. Like, imagine sitting at home, possibly enjoying the roast, and then someone makes a joke about how your loved one, you know, died a violent, tragic death. Like, making a joke about your loved one's violent, tragic death. That's gotta hurt. Come on now.
Yeah, and I think too with
So look, it's extreme. It was a tasteless joke, and it was probably the wrong audience for that. It's kind of like, oh, so Kevin Hart's black, and then we just gonna make fun of like a really respected black person who went out in a awful, unjust way. Okay, so it's not just George Floyd. There were other unsavory jokes about dead people. Pete Davidson made a joke about Charlie Kirk that caught attention.
Tony Hinchcliffe is here, looking like both a child molester and the doll they give the child to show where he touched them. Tony reminds me of Charlie Kirk, in that he's definitely been on camera letting a guy unload in his throat. Oh, you don't know me? You don't know me? Yeah. Kill Tony. Please, someone. Kill Tony.
I'm not going to lie, that was funny because it's like it was a wordplay and he said unloading in his throat. It's kind of like that was better than the George Floyd one. That wasn't no wordplay. And, you know, I've had some controversy recently. I didn't even make a joke, but like even noticing that there's words that are similar and like it's kind of like, oh, that word could mean this. Like, oh, that word could apply to something else. That's the cornerstone of comedy, right? Just notice like these words, you could rearrange these words in a way to make a punchline. The George Floyd one didn't really do that. That was low-key just disrespectful. I guess really just trying to drag like a famous black figure to drag Kevin Hart's blackness, I guess. In this case, it is definitely mocking Charlie Kirk's death, but really he's using the circumstances and the similarities in the Charlie Kirk situation to make a joke about how much he wants, how much he wants Tony Hinchcliffe to be killed, right, for a joke. Now, obviously, I get the joke. I get why it's offensive. A lot of people have been making jokes about Charlie Kirk. I don't particularly care. I'll make some jokes about Charlie Kirk if you want. But the conservatives have been very upset about what was said by Pete Davidson.
Only problem.
Okay? So, it says, this is incredible. These two said a joke about Charlie Kirk in Kevin Hart's roast was inappropriate, then seconds later got triggered when Piers Morgan read out a statement from George Floyd's family objecting to another joke made during the roast. Says, why do we care what George Floyd's family says? So, yeah, there's some hypocrisy going on with the conservatives.
I just didn't think that joke about Charlie Kirk was funny. I think he could have took that joke.
It was funny.
Used anyone else in a different scenario, and I think it would have been more funny.
Then for you?
Comparing a line that is supposed to be crossed, it's comedy. Do I think it's inappropriate? Yeah. Do I think it was uncalled for? Yeah. Do I think he could have done a better job? I don't think he's funny, and I don't think the joke was funny. You're comparing a guy who has children that are going to grow up and see these things, whose throat got shot out, traumatizing millions of people around the world, to like, I'm sorry, what's the politically correct statement, blowing loads in the guy's throat? Those two things have nothing in common. It makes no sense, and I don't think it's funny.
Moments later.
Decision to
Just for the record, by the way, George Floyd also had kids.
allow Tony Hinchcliffe on stage was sad for the culture, arguing that Hart should have stepped in before the joke landed, given Hinchcliffe's history of making similar remarks at other events. They said, we're trying to rebuild things for our community and make things better in our community. Let's try to be a little bit more positive and not sit up there doing colon inspections by white comedians.
Piers, who said that quote, if you don't mind?
This was the George Floyd family.
Okay.
Why do we care what George Floyd family says about anything?
Yeah, why are we worried about their family?
Well, George Floyd was killed by a police officer who's now serving.
Oh, the hero, George Floyd.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's like, how's it any different, really? I feel like George Floyd's death, I ain't even going to say too much, right? But like George Floyd's death was just like, the result of just horrible racism. Charlie Kirk's death was a different kind of prejudice, but like you should care about both of those people. You should care about both of those people. So there were some more unsavory jokes that led to backlash, throughout the night. There were other jokes that took things to another level. Cat Williams, he kind of joked about Kevin Hart attending the Diddy parties, which was quite funny.
They tried to cancel Kevin for the Diddy parties. They hurled allegations at him. Kevin was at a bunch of Diddy parties, but in his defense, it was only because Diddy thought he was 10. Kevin even hosted a record release party for P. Diddy. There was a record number of releases on the bed, in the pool, on the floor, everywhere but the hose. But I want to be clear, just because Kevin went to Diddy parties does not mean he did something wrong. The fact that he gets all quiet when you bring it up, that means he did something wrong. They tried to cancel.
That was hilarious. I'm not going to lie. All right. That is hilarious. So there were more, right? We had people from the mainstream industry who you wouldn't even expect to be around such unsavory jokes, right? We had The Rock, who actually went after Kevin Hart's dad, who kind of struggled with addiction, made some jokes at his expense.
both of our dads died. I thought it is something that bonds us. Can you guys see my old man? Okay, oh cool, there he is, yeah. He was a fucking tank, you know? Now, whereas Kevin's dad...
Oh, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. What the fuck was that, man? There's a better picture of my dad.
Okay, you're all right. No, I just wanted to show, like, you know, both our dads showing their chests and what their bodies look like. Okay, look, there's a better picture of Kevin's dad.
Whoever released these pictures are fired. You're fucking fired. Son of a bitch.
That is a legit mugshot of Kevin's dad, and as we all know, recently.
That was very funny. Okay, that was very funny. The Rock, not even a comedian, he's funnier than most of these people. Now, Shane Gillis would do his little bit. He would joke about all the comedians that went to perform in Saudi Arabia for money, and Pete Davidson's firefighter father that actually died rescuing people following the 9/11 attacks. And Shane Gillis, you know, he's slick with it. He's very, very funny. He knows how to get offensive, but also he's quite wholesome and can reel it back in.
Kevin performed at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, sponsored by the Saudi government. They offered me a ton of money to do it, but I said no. Kevin said yes. The reason I said no was to honor the brave police officers and firefighters who lost their lives that day. Right, Pete? Kevin actually did really well in Saudi Arabia, but only because they thought he was the monkey from Aladdin. Kevin didn't just do comedy in Saudi Arabia. They actually gave him a sword and a shield, and they made him fight a scorpion. And then at night, they'd put one of those little falcon helmets on him so he could go to sleep.
So it's funny, man. You know, he's kind of making jokes about his blackness, but really it's a kind of the target of that comedy is more, you know, the Saudi Arabians and their ignorance. You know, the idea that they would think that he is whatever is a joke on them being racist. And, you know, from what I understand in the Middle East, from my experience, hey, they don't rock with black people like that. Okay, is what it is, right? Any of my people that black homies that have been to the Middle East, go Dubai, Abu Dhabi, you know what I'm saying? You can have a good life, you can live well, you got some bread, but at the same time, no matter how rich you are, if you're black, they're gonna put you down a little bit. That's just unfortunately, that kind of culturally is a bit of a thing in some of these places with some people. Not everybody's like that. But anyway, that's where the joke is being directed, and I think it's interesting to compare that. Like Shane Gillis, he's making a joke about racism, but it's at the expense of racists, and kind of at Kevin Hart's expense for basically hanging out with the racists as a black guy. Whereas, you know, the Tony Hinchcliffe's joke about George Floyd, it was just to disrespect George Floyd and to disrespect black people as a whole, which is why wasn't really a funny joke, to be honest with you. Like, not really a funny joke. Anyway, Kevin Hart he endured a lot of very offensive jokes and he kind of giggled along, and some people didn't like that. Some people saw that as something of an endorsement of the jokes that were being made. And recently, Kevin Hart popped on The Breakfast Club and he kind of addressed, you know, some of the ill feelings towards him when it comes to, you know, some of the jokes that he giggled along with. Obviously, I'm a fan of comedy. I've done comedy actually in the past. Like when I used to live in London, kind of full time when I was a student, I used to kind of run around doing like stand-up comedy, open mics and stuff. So, you know, I find the comedy culture like really interesting. It's something I'm really fascinated by, and you know, I follow along, not as close as hip hop, of course, but I follow the comedy scene. But like, it's even just funny to me. It's like they've got a comedian on the show, and look at Charlemagne's face. This is the least comedy thing you could imagine. Like, imagine you're a comedian on stage and a dude's in the crowd looking at you like this, right? This whole premise is hilarious because it's like they got him there. They talking about like, it's like, imagine a comedian's trying to just be themselves, and it's like they're hitting you with the most unfunny shit. They're like, you see the interview I did with George Floyd's brother? It's like, bro, what a clanger. Like, whoa, that's like you sucking all the oxygen out the room with bringing such serious stuff to a comedian. But I kind of get the angle that they're going for, but I feel like the Breakfast Club turning into this kind of like outrage machine, you know, it's not really conducive to have like helpful conversations. But at the same time, it's going to kind of get Kevin Hart into a corner. It's got his back up against the wall in a way that's quite interesting. And as somebody that thinks Kevin Hart is Colonel Cringe these days, look how well he disarmed Charlemagne. Charlemagne was looking at him so serious. He's like, if you watch the George Floyd's brother interview, and he's like, hell no, I ain't going to watch that. And then he even had Charlemagne laughing. He's low-key being disrespectful. Like, I would never, you know what I'm saying? So he's kind of got his reasoning right. He's arguing back and basically saying, like, look, What do you want me to do? Like, stop the production and fight him? Hell no, ain't no way I'm watching the interview with George Floyd's brother. And I think that's a reasonable response. But at the same time, you know, Kevin Hart, he sat there with like a 200-gram watch on and shit. Like, he just basically over there just like not trying to hear it. You know what I'm saying? He quarter zip, no shirt underneath it. He just doing his, he's not really giving a fuck what's going on. And really, the Breakfast Club, you know, I get why people were upset about these things, but it's almost like it's a little bit lame to come out, get Kevin Hart over here on your show and then use that as an opportunity to police comedy. So in the aftermath of all this situation coming out, there's been some interesting things. You know, a lot of people have been saying, how on earth was Cat Williams up there, you know, doing the roast to Kevin Hart? Because, like, you know, they had their beef. They apparently they squashed the beef, and Cat Williams was cool to be around Kevin Hart. But it's like everyone's looking back saying, "Yo, when Cat Williams was on Club Shay Shay, he was demolishing Kevin Hart." Like, you remember this? It's just a little throwback. This was hilarious.
As when you started out. I mean, Eddie Murphy not telling those jokes. Richard Pryor wouldn't be able to tell those jokes in 2024 that they told in the 70s and the 80s.
So they wouldn't have told them.
But that's my point.
They're not inferior people.
No.
If they were in this time, they would be going according to our time. Just like then, we were going according to that. Like, that's how it is in the world. There are words that we can use for a while. And when we use them for a while until somebody says that ain't a good word, we should stop saying that.
Correct.
That don't make people feel good. And we stop saying the word. And we move on to another word. You can't say the R word. You can certainly say special needs.
Yeah.
You can certainly say spectrum.
Slow.
There are things that you can say to get your point that don't have to hurt people.
Right.
But you would know that if what you did was construct the English language for a living, then you would understand that part. Kevin told you he wasn't going to wear no dress until they offered him the dress, and then he put it on. And what did he say after he wore it? I made my own decision. Duh. But you didn't make it before they brought it up, did you? It's okay. All right.
So he was saying Kevin Hart, basically, you know, he done sold out to Hollywood. He done put on a dress. He said he made his own decision. He said, hey, you wouldn't have been wearing that dress unless they brought it out, and you compromised yourself. So they're saying, you know, Cat Williams destroyed Kevin Hart at the roast. It was kind of interesting to see him even on there. But anyway, a lot of people have been reacting to, you know, Kevin Hart popping up on the Breakfast Club and him kind of giving his thoughts on the George Floyd joke and basically saying, look, this is what it is. Like, it's a roast. I ain't defending it. I ain't changing that. A lot of people saying, what does George Floyd have to do with Kevin Hart? That's $1 million question right here. Nobody pointing this out. Absolutely nothing. Racists just love bringing up George Floyd to score points with other racists. I will say, Tony Hinchcliffe, that joke kind of sucked. George Floyd ain't have nothing to do with nothing. What, just because because Kevin's black and it's a roast to Kevin, I can just insult the most, you know, like, not the most, but one of the most famous black people that has been subjected to a horrible injustice. I'm just going to insult them to roast you as a black person. Like, that was lame, and I feel like that's something that's not being pointed out. So people are saying, well, Kev is right. Shock and awe is par for the course when it comes to comedy roasts. Having a known habitual line stepper, borderline racist comedian Tony Hinchcliffe be part of the roast was 100% Kevin Hart's choice. Yes, he had no control over the material, but having him on the show, period, was very well in his control, and he was on board with it. Says exactly, it's one thing when most comedians do an actual wild racial joke at a roast, but it's another when the racist comedian whose entire shtick is saying racist stuff for shock value tells one more racist joke. When the racism isn't shocking anymore, it's probably time to do something else. Maybe Tony should start trying to be funny, or producers should stop hiring him. Okay? People aren't feeling Tony, all right? Some people aren't feeling Kev. They're saying, yeah, but what does George Floyd even have to do with you and the other black panelists besides being black? That's it. That's the connection. This is the definition of hack comedy. Nothing was clever. Nothing was witty. Nothing took effort. These guys call themselves the best, and most of it was so mid. I would say you could see the difference night and day between Tony Hinchcliffe and Shane Gillis, right? Like, he was actually doing well-constructed punchlines, and the target of the humor was a lot better. Right? People saying people roast the shit out of each other, say the most egregious shit about each other, saying the George or Charlie jokes were just low-hanging, unfunny shit. It just is what it is. People saying, this is the problem I have. When someone made a joke about Kraft during the Brady roast, he got up right there and said, don't say that shit again. So yes, Kevin can react. People saying it was mid, the whole thing, weird-ass groups of folks to roast him. It gave do this or you don't get your funny AF show embarrassing. Racist jokes are funnier when they don't come from the actual racist. They're saying, not going to lie, Cat was right about him, like, for real. Comedians don't have time for sensitive people. They've always been this way. Kevin basically just said that's what roasts are, and people are still mad about it, which kind of proves his point. Here's the thing. It wasn't the roast of George Floyd. It wasn't the roast of George Floyd. I don't feel like there was really any need to confront Tony. It's just like, bro, you suck. Like, you suck. Get off this, like, keep it moving. You're shit. You're shit at comedy. it's a weird one, okay? I do feel like Kevin Hart is just like, I don't know. I feel like Kevin Hart is due a bit of a downfall. I feel like maybe they're just trying to find anything they can to put on him. Like, as someone that used to be a fan of Kevin Hart, and I find him incredibly cringe now, it's just kind of like, I feel like they're looking for anything they can to throw at him. But I feel like Cat Williams was kind of on point when he was roasting Kevin Hart back in his Club Shay Shay era, you know, just sort of like, basically just he a sellout. He just a big fat sellout who ain't really funny anymore. Like, that's it. That's the best way I can summarize it. Like, he just king sellout, okay? But he's making broad comedy that's appealing to everybody. So, you know, you can't really be edgy with it. You can't really be innovative with it. You just got to people please everyone. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the situation. You know, it's a different kind of topic for me, but hope you found that interesting and useful. I might do some more deep dives into Kevin Hart when more things happen with him. I do find him interesting. I do feel like he definitely sold out and isn't what he used to be, but who knows, he could pull it back. And, you know, I can't deny he's been incredibly successful as a comedian, even if the actual product that he puts out there has been declining in quality for many years now. Anyway, that's my thoughts. End of the video. See you next time. Peace.